Hello everybody, it's Daniel here, bringing you a Team Fortress 2 gameplay commentary once again. And I hope no one minds that I'm playing the engineer for like the 12th millionth time around the channel, but I was in an NG mood this afternoon. We're playing some NG. I hope that's okay. If anything, it actually gives me a chance to show off that things have been progressing since the Great Reset video I made much earlier in the summer. For those who may not remember that one, that's where I basically attempted to get a little bit better and improve my TF2, because I really am the best of players. And I like to think that it's actually starting to show in more and more of the engineer commentaries in particular, because one of the big things I never did back then is actually use my shotgun. And that's something I've tried to practice more than anything else when it comes to the class. I'm not just trying to stand behind my sentry anymore, and it's taken a very long time to sort of move myself out of that mindset. I'm still in the process of it. I'd be a fool to say that I've completely mastered the class now, but I like to think that I'm actually getting better at it, and I hope that shows when it comes to the gameplays. Now today I want to talk about something that was kind of sparked on me after watching a recent Funke video. He put out a really good commentary recently called The Stickler's Dilemma. I do strongly recommend you check this out because it's actually a really great insight into the mindset behind making videos on YouTube, and basically the commentator mindset. Because in that video he's talking about the challenges that commentators set upon themselves and that strive to always try and accomplish something more when it comes to making videos. And it's a very valid commentary to make, and it's the sort of commentary that you can actually see a lot of people around YouTube actually making. At some point or another, I think everyone has to question what they're doing on the internet and why they still enjoy it. By making that sort of video, it's almost a validation in itself, because you're trying to lay out the facts and present them in a way that's hopefully coherent, and by testing that against your audience almost, you can kind of get a response from that and work it out from that. Like, if your reason for still playing the game makes absolutely no sense to anyone watching, then you really haven't worked it out too well yet, because no one can actually engage with that idea. It's a really interesting commentary nonetheless, because it does provide some insight into the commentator mindset, and it's the sort of thing that I can very much relate to, because there isn't a constant drive in almost anything you do to constantly try and improve yourself. Like I mentioned even there that I've been trying to get better at my engineer game. It's a very common practice that if you just spend a lot of time engaged with something, that you do want to try and make something more out of it, even when it's only like kind of just fun or sort of like a passion project or a hobby on the side that you have. Like, again, playing Team Fortress 2 isn't exactly work, yet I'm going to try and do something with it. I'm going to try and do something more than just play Team Fortress 2 by playing more Team Fortress 2. It sounds silly when you lay it out like that, but you can kind of see what I mean, I hope, even from that. Like, I'm just trying to do something more with the game, and I'll still be kicking back and having fun with it, but I'm trying to accomplish something with that fun. It's the kind of thing that you'll see with any sort of like hobby, where it's like there's varying degrees of like kind of skill and like kind of practice that you can see in it. Like, for instance, if you're someone who loves photography, you're not just going to take a picture of a windmill and call it a day. That would be kind of silly. You're not just going to like have your camera there, take the one snapshot and conclude, this is a nice picture, that'll do me. No, you're going to try and outdo yourself. You're going to try and take more pictures. You're going to try and trump that picture of a windmill. I think I've only gone for windmills because there happens to be one in my town. But you're going to try and constantly outdo yourself in that way, because you make a challenge out of it, you make a game out of it, and it's entertaining and fulfilling to try and fulfill that. And so when it comes to questioning why you constantly pursue these things, you've kind of got to lay it out sort of clearly and in this sort of like challenging format. Like, I touched on this a little bit in the last commentary, even when I was talking about the healthiest way to play Team Fortress 2, and that's setting your own objectives. I believe that to be the healthiest way to actually engage with most activities, and I don't think people are going to even like kind of deny me on that point. I mean, even if you're like, say, studying for for school or for college, you're going to set yourself tasks and you're going to try and work towards them and try and have as much enjoyment as you can out of it as you go along with that. It's a very kind of practical way to actually kind of look at life, because you can divide it up in these small little sort of little packages and these short-term goals that you achieve that ultimately lead up to something that you may not even fully comprehend yet. Like, who knows, my attempts to get slightly better at Team Fortress 2 might land me on like a platinum team someday. But I'm gonna flat out say it right now, it's not going to ever amount to something like that, because I am still for the large part rubbish at this game. But I hope you can see what I mean. Like, you don't know where these things are actually going to go by setting these objectives for yourself and try and work out why you're continuing these things. Like, the Stickler's dilemma that Funke talks about is very interesting because it lays out what he wants to achieve for himself in regards to being a commentator, and by laying that out, he has a clearer indication of what he needs to do to achieve that aim. Now, it differs depending on the commentator. Like, the main reason that I'm always making videos is that I just kind of enjoy talking to people. I really do treasure just being able to interact with a huge community of people, and I have an absolute blast doing it. Like, for me, my role as commentator is not necessarily all the time trying to outdo and challenge myself, because, let's face it, I've stuck to some very traditional formats around here for the very longest time. Like, I really enjoy the humble form of the commentary. But for me, it's always trying to produce something like entertaining, something maybe interesting or enlightening, and that's when I sort of devise my own challenge for it. And again, that's something that will differ by person. Like, your goal, say if you're like a highlights channel, might be to find the absolute best air shot as Soldier, and you're going to like dedicate your entire task to finding that one perfect moment that excels far beyond all others. It differs by person in that regard. We all have the objectives we want to lay out for ourselves, and it's why you see so many commentaries of this nature where people talk about the nature of commentary, the nature of why they're doing things, and producing content. And how I want to relate this information back to Team Fortress 2, kind of distancing from the community, is that it's an important consideration that I think Valve also has to make in regards to the game. There has to be a constant interrogation as to why content is still being produced for Team Fortress 2, if we want that content to be of any practical substance for the game. Because you might just look at sort of like the droughts between updates and wonder, it's like, maybe Valve should just implement all these community maps and this huge community update that people have devised for the game. But there seems to be a sort of like internal questioning on Valve's end as to if they actually truly want to do this. It's an interesting thing to say, and I think it goes against a lot of opinions of other people around here, but I actually believe that Valve doesn't entirely want to hand over the game into the hands of the community. They want to have a varying degree of control on this, because the community implemented system is actually something that we've seen with systems like Steam Greenlight, where it actually became quite messy quite quickly because there wasn't quality assurance. So I'd still think that Valve wants to be a sort of curator in this, and don't entirely want to hand it over to community development. Now again, the issue here comes from the fact that we don't really know if Valve wants to continue the development themselves. They're kind of like locking the gate and not letting anyone else have the key in this regard. And that's a topic that you'll see a lot of people cover. Like Uncle Dane, I think, has a fantastic commentary on that himself, where he talks about the Valve problem with Team Fortress 2. But it's a constant interrogation that has to happen if you're in sort of any creative industry. Like, again, to liken producing content for games to producing videos on the internet, you have to constantly question why you're doing this, what you're getting out of this, and what it ultimately works towards. Because life, in the grand culmination of it all, is a series of grand events that you want to be able to look back on and say that you enjoyed your time with. That's, I believe, like the main requirement and criteria almost for living a fulfilling life in that regard. You want to just enjoy yourself. You want to be proud of what you did. You can't just settle for one thing you did and constantly reproduce that unless it's something that you still actively enjoy. And again, it's kind of interesting for Team Fortress 2 because I believe that there is that constant desire to kind of outdo themselves, and it's why we have these varying degrees of inconsistency between updates. Like one update we might have, it goes in a completely competitive direction. In another one we'll have something like man versus machine implemented. It's different tasks being set. And while the consistency may vary wildly at times, perhaps to the game's detriment, but we'll have to talk about that at a future point, the idea is noble at heart. It's that challenge upon the designers to try and constantly strive to do something new. And that's why I believe that when people always ask this recurrent question, is Team Fortress 2 dying? It's a question I think we're all pretty much sick of hearing at this point, because it's thrown around so often. Like, I'm guilty of throwing it around myself. I'm not going to excuse myself in this. But you hear it being thrown around because there is these varying kind of challenges being imposed, and you kind of just look at it from an outsider's perspective. You look in at it and wonder, they're not making any content for the game. I wonder what's going on there. Have they simply lost interest? I actually believe it's because they have more interest than ever, and that they're just trying to outdo themselves once again. They're in a sort of like, they've hit a creative wall in that regards. They've hit the Stickler's dilemma that Funke even talks about, and they're just trying to outdo themselves. And it's an important thing to discuss because you don't often see this perspective from the creator. Like, we're more so the observer of it. And particularly with Valve, like, considering they're such a silent company, we definitely don't see this viewpoint, and it's something to consider for the game, because Team Fortress 2 is still doing remarkably well. It's one of the most profitable free-to-play games on the market. It is still being supported close to a decade down the line. The updates might be few and far between these days. It might seem that we have this continual drought from the period of like January until the summer update, where everyone gets a bit antsy and is wondering, is something actually going to happen with the game? But something is going to happen with the game, because I do believe that there are still passionate people kind of working on it. In the same vein that I believe that there are passionate video makers making content for this game, and making content about other games. It's something that interesting that I just thought I'd make a commentary on, because you see it so often being thrown around by commentators, and I haven't really seen a commentary that talks about this questioning nature of commentating itself, the sort of videos that you see. We've basically gone a little meta with it and dove on into the existential crisis and considered and questioned why the existential crises crop up. We've gone to a whole new level of postmodernism, guys. Hold on to your horses, or metaphorical ones at least. But I hope you enjoyed this commentary nonetheless. I hope it's been a bit of an interesting insight, and it's something that you might even just consider where if your favorite game developer, or even favorite content creator hasn't made a video in a while. Like, the funny thing is, content creators get this problem all the time, where if we don't make videos for a week, everyone just thinks we're dead. But truth be told, we're not dead. We're either just taking a brief little break and pursuing some other dreams and ambitions we have in our life, or we're just struggling with our own ideas because we've set a new challenge for ourselves and we're trying to work towards it. Like, for both game and the content creators, we're not dead, and we're still more interested than ever. So I think it's something important just to consider in that regard. And thank you so much for watching this commentary. Hope it's been insightful in some capacity, and I'll see you with something new soon. Goodbye, and thank you so much for watching.